In late February of 1993, a routine satellite sweep picked up something it wasn't supposed to see. Beneath a wide stretch of Arctic ice north of Greenland, thermal imaging registered a steady heat bloom, too symmetrical to be geological, too consistent to be equipment drift. The grid square had been cataloged as inactive since 1978, when a Cold War submarine resupply station was formally decommissioned and sealed. The file was thin: concrete tunnels, reinforced docks, fuel storage, abandoned. Within 48 hours, the anomaly was forwarded to a joint naval task group. 9 U.S. Navy SEALs were assigned to conduct a quiet entry and confirm the source. The mission profile was straightforward: verify structural integrity, document residual systems, exit. They deployed under overcast skies onto ice that had not been disturbed in 15 years. The insertion was conducted from a modified Los Angeles-class submarine operating beneath shifting pack ice. The team deployed through a forward lockout chamber shortly after 0200 hours. Surface temperatures hovered near -30. Wind speeds were manageable but unpredictable, pushing fine sheets of snow across the ice in low, horizontal currents. Visibility extended less than 100 meters in any direction. The SEAL element consisted of 9 operators from a West Coast-based team selected for cold weather experience and confined space operations. They carried standard Arctic loadouts, suppressed carbines sealed against moisture intrusion, thermal optics, closed-circuit rebreathers for potential submerged access points, and compact camera rigs transmitting through a tethered relay buoy positioned at the surface breach point. Their objective was not combat, it was verification. Archival schematics suggested that the submarine resupply station had been constructed during the late 1960s as a contingency fueling and munitions node, designed to remain dormant beneath layered ice. It was never officially listed on most public records. According to declassified fragments, it consisted of a vertical shaft descending 40 feet into reinforced corridors, leading to 2 pressurized dock chambers capable of accommodating attack submarines under specific tidal conditions. When the base was shut down in 1978, engineers reportedly drained fuel lines, powered down reactor-assisted heating systems, and sealed primary hatches with composite locks. It was not meant to remain active. The team located the entry shaft precisely where satellite coordinates indicated. Snow accumulation had hardened into a crust above the circular steel hatch. After clearing ice buildup and verifying structural stability, they cut through the external seal. The interior ladder descended into darkness, breath vapor trailing in narrow beams of helmet light. At 0247, the first operator reported a temperature differential. The air below felt warmer, not by much, perhaps 10 degrees, enough to notice through insulated layers. The first camera feed transmitted cleanly: steel walls, frost crystals clinging to corners of riveted seams. No obvious breach, no visible flooding. The descent continued. When the point man reached the base of the ladder, he paused longer than expected. His audio remained steady, but the camera feed adjusted repeatedly, compensating for low light. The corridor ahead was illuminated, not fully, but enough to cast a faint, amber wash along the floor panels. Someone in the command center aboard the submarine reportedly asked for clarification. Confirm internal lighting. The response came after a few seconds. Affirmative. Corridor lights active. There was no generator hum in the background, no mechanical echo, just air movement. the team entered in staggered formation, marking their path with low-visibility chem tags. According to later transcripts, the interior air was dry and breathable, without immediate filtration. Frost patterns suggested the heating systems had cycled at some point in recent history, not continuously, but recently enough to prevent total freeze. They advanced 50 meters before encountering the first bulkhead door. It was closed, but unlocked. The manual override wheel turned smoothly. Inside, they found a storage chamber containing sealed containers labeled in Cold War-era stenciling. None appeared disturbed. At 0312 hours, radio distortion began. The surface relay buoy transmitted intermittent static layered beneath normal communication. Words clipped at their edges. The signal strength indicator fluctuated despite stable positioning. Technicians adjusted frequencies. For several minutes, clarity returned. Then one of the rear operators reported hearing movement. Not mechanical, not structural settling. Something paced, lightly, parallel to their position, beyond the adjacent wall. The description was precise. Footfall cadence matching their own rate of advance. When they stopped, it stopped. The team leader ordered a halt. Silence filled the corridor. Helmet microphones amplified breathing. Fabric shifting. Nothing else. They resumed. The sound resumed. It tracked them past 2 junctions and toward the primary dock access tunnel. Thermal optics were deployed. The wall surfaces showed uniform cold signatures. No visible heat source. No detectable biological presence. Inside the submarine, analysts suggested acoustic anomalies. Expanding metal, reacting to temperature variance. It was plausible. Steel structures under stress can mimic rhythm. The explanation was accepted, provisionally. At 0338, the team reached the first dock chamber. The space was vast, larger than anticipated. The ceiling arched overhead, reinforced by ribbed beams disappearing into shadow. At the center lay a submerged basin, ice-free. Water gently lapped against the docking rails. The basin was not frozen. That detail shifted the tone of the transmission logs. According to decommissioning procedures, circulation pumps were shut down in 1978. Without active heating or tidal cycling, the chamber should have solidified decades earlier. Instead, faint condensation gathered along interior support columns. The air held moisture. One operator knelt at the water's edge and dipped a gloved hand into the basin. He later described the temperature as just above freezing. Not geothermal warmth, not natural thaw, controlled. The camera feed flickered briefly at 0346. In that flicker, a distortion lasting less than 2 seconds. Motion appeared across the far bulkhead, a shape crossing from left to right. The recording quality degraded at that moment. Frame analysis later suggested compression artifacts. Pixel bleed. No conclusive form. The team leader acknowledged the distortion, but did not pursue it. Instead, he ordered a perimeter sweep. 2 operators moved along the outer walkway. One paused near a sealed maintenance hatch. He reported feeling vibration beneath his boots, faint, rhythmic, as if distant machinery cycled behind reinforced walls. There were no systems online, according to historical documentation. At 0359, communication fractured again. Words dissolved into bursts of static. The relay buoy registered full power, yet signal clarity deteriorated sharply. The last intelligible transmission from the team leader was measured and calm. Command: we have active systems. Repeat: active systems inside the structure. A pause. Then, Stand by. Seconds later, audio collapsed entirely. The video feed froze on a still frame of the dock basin, light reflecting on black water. Surface support teams attempted re-establishing contact for 13 minutes. There was no response, no gunfire, no distress signal, no environmental alarm. At 0414 hours, the signal ceased altogether. Above them, Arctic wind continued moving snow across undisturbed ice. Recovery protocol began before dawn. The submarine repositioned beneath the ice shelf to maintain proximity while a secondary dive team prepared for insertion. Standard procedure required immediate verification in the event of total signal loss, especially in confined structures where environmental failure could escalate quickly. Hypothermia, gas exposure, structural collapse, each had to be ruled out. At 0610 hours, the second team entered through the same vertical shaft. Weather conditions had not changed. Surface ice showed no disturbance beyond the original cut. There were no additional tracks, no signs of forced exit. The latter descent felt colder, according to the diver, who later provided testimony during an internal review. He described the temperature shift as subtle but noticeable. The warmth reported earlier was gone. Interior lighting was still active. That detail remained consistent. Corridor bulbs cast the same low amber glow. Frost patterns along the walls appeared unchanged. The chem markers placed by the first team were visible at regular intervals, leading toward the dock chamber. No sign of panic in their placement. No erratic deviation. The second team advanced cautiously, announcing their position at each junction. There was no echo beyond normal structural acoustics. No footstep cadence beyond their own. When they reached the first bulkhead door, it stood open, exactly as the original team had left it. Storage containers remained sealed. No signs of tampering. Radio clarity held for the first 20 minutes. Command personnel monitored breathing rates and movement patterns through helmet telemetry. All readings remained within operational norms. At 0642, the second team entered the primary dock chamber. The basin was still ice-free. The water surface, however, appeared calmer. No visible condensation now collected along the support beams. Air felt colder, thinner. One diver recorded a reading 2 degrees below freezing within the chamber, a sharp contrast from the earlier report. They called out for the missing operators. No response. The perimeter sweep revealed no bodies along the walkway. No equipment dropped. No blood. No visible struggle. Their first assumption was submersion. If a structural failure had opened beneath the basin, it could have pulled one or more men under. Yet the docking rails were intact. The water surface showed no turbulence patterns, consistent with recent entry. 2 divers entered the basin on tether lines. Visibility underwater was limited to several meters due to mineral particulate. They conducted grid sweeps across the chamber floor. The basin was deep, deeper than schematics indicated. Original documents listed maximum depth at 18 feet. Sonar pings now suggested closer to 30. They found nothing. No bodies, no weapons, no displaced sediment that might indicate descent into a hidden shaft. At 0718 hours, one diver reported a sound, faint and distant, transmitted through the water rather than air. A low oscillation, like distant propeller churn, far beneath the chamber. It was difficult to isolate. The support team considered interference from the submarine above. Acoustic bleed-through can travel unpredictably under ice. Still, the oscillation did not match known frequencies from their own vessel. After 40 minutes underwater, with no findings, The dive was aborted. Attention shifted to the maintenance hatch, where the first team had reported vibration beneath their boots. The hatch remained sealed. Manual override required 2 operators applying force in sequence. When opened, it revealed a narrow access tunnel descending at a slight angle. The interior walls were dry. No footprints, no condensation trails. The tunnel extended approximately 60 meters before terminating at a reinforced door marked in faded Cyrillic lettering, remnants of cooperative Arctic operations during détente years. The door was locked from the inside. There were no external handles. The review board later debated this detail extensively. If the first team had accessed this tunnel, the door should have been secured from the exterior position. Instead, it appeared as though it had been closed by someone beyond it. Thermal scans detected nothing behind the door. No heat signatures, no active machinery. They chose not to breach it. The priority remained personnel recovery. By 0830 hours, the second team had retraced the entire mapped interior twice. No deviation, no hidden passages beyond those listed in the declassified schematics. Environmental readings normalized to sub-freezing stability. Before exiting, one operator paused at the edge of the basin, the same location where the first team leader had stood during his final transmission. He later stated that the water surface reflected more than their lights. He could not specify what he meant, only that for a moment, the reflection appeared delayed, a fraction of a second behind his movement. When he shifted position, the image realigned. The detail was dismissed as refraction. By 0945 hours, the second team exited the structure. The hatch was resealed temporarily pending further investigation. Over the following 72 hours, additional reconnaissance was conducted using unmanned submersibles inserted through drilled ice shafts directly into the basin. Sonar mapping produced inconsistent depth readings. Some passes returned 18 feet. Others extended beyond 35 before losing signal clarity. There were no visible tunnels leading outward. No thermal plumes rising from geothermal vents. No mechanical systems actively cycling, at least none detectable by standard instrumentation. The power source sustaining interior lighting remained unexplained. Engineers theorized residual battery banks might have retained charge under insulated conditions. Critics argued that such capacity would not endure 15 years without maintenance. The official report concluded with cautious language: environmental anomaly, personnel status unresolved, no conclusive evidence of hostile engagement. The 9 operators were listed as missing during classified operations. Families were notified under non-disclosure protocols. Details remained sealed. Over time, fragments surfaced through retired personnel and secondary testimonies. A sonar technician recalled brief readings suggesting external mass movement beyond the basin's outer wall, something large shifting beneath ice strata. The data was flagged as equipment error. A communications specialist described the static overlay during the first team's final minutes as patterned rather than random, almost rhythmic. His observation was never formally recorded. Years later, a civilian satellite contractor reviewing archived thermal logs from early 1993 noticed that the original heat bloom diminished sharply within hours of the second team's departure. Within a week, the grid square registered as thermally inert. By late spring, shifting ice patterns rendered the precise location difficult to relocate without exact coordinates. Those coordinates were classified. In 2001, an exploratory Arctic survey vessel attempted to map Cold War debris fields in similar latitudes. The crew reported minor magnetic interference in one sector, but attributed it to mineral deposits beneath the seabed. No confirmed rediscovery of the structure has been documented since 1993. Among those who served in specialized naval units during that period, the story circulates quietly, not as myth, not as accusation, as an absence. 9 men entered a structure that official records insist had been abandoned. The structure showed signs of operation, and when they were gone, the warmth beneath the ice faded. In the months that followed, internal review boards focused on practical explanations. Equipment malfunction ranked highest. Arctic environments distort signal propagation. Ice density, salt content, and atmospheric layering can fragment radio transmission in unpredictable ways. It was conceivable that the first team experienced progressive communications failure, became disoriented in a confined structure, and entered an uncharted shaft or submerged cavity. Yet that possibility raised its own problems. The corridors were not complex. The chem markers remained in straight, deliberate intervals. There were no scuff patterns suggesting panic or rapid withdrawal. Ammunition counts, logged prior to insertion, were never reconciled because nothing was recovered. If there had been gunfire, acoustic signatures would have registered through hull-mounted sensors aboard the submarine. None did. Fatigue was also considered. Extended cold exposure can alter perception. Even highly trained operators are not immune to sensory distortion when moving from extreme cold into marginally warmer interiors. Auditory hallucinations, footsteps matching cadence, rhythmic vibration, are documented in polar expeditions dating back to early 20th century Arctic surveys. But hallucination does not activate corridor lighting. It does not maintain a dock basin free of ice, and it does not close a reinforced hatch from the inside. There were attempts to identify undocumented Cold War contingencies. Some historians suggested that the base might have been partially reactivated in the 1980s under classified Arctic surveillance initiatives. A covert foreign presence was theorized. If another nation had accessed and maintained the structure, the SEAL team could have encountered personnel who withdrew before confrontation. That theory faltered under scrutiny. There were no foreign acoustic signatures, no vessel movement beneath the ice, no displaced snow at the surface. The basin showed no mooring scars from recent docking. If someone had operated there, they left no trace beyond warmth and light. One retired naval engineer later commented, off record, that the most unsettling detail was not the disappearance but the environmental normalization afterward. Systems that appeared active simply ceased once attention was drawn to them. The heat bloom faded. The vibration stopped. The structure returned to thermal silence. He described it as something recognizing observation. That phrasing never entered official documentation. Among the second recovery team, most remained restrained in their recollections. Years later, during informal reunions, a few acknowledged small details that never appeared in transcripts. One mentioned a faint metallic odor in the dock chamber, inconsistent with stagnant air. Another recalled that when the maintenance hatch was opened, the air pressure shift felt outward, not inward, as though something beyond the sealed door maintained a slightly higher pressure. None of them claimed to have seen anything directly. The diver, who observed the delayed reflection in the water basin, rarely elaborated. He maintained that refraction explained it. Light behaves unpredictably in low-angle environments. Still water can distort depth perception. He repeated this calmly each time the question resurfaced, and yet he never volunteered for another under-ice insertion after that mission. In 2007, limited portions of the 1993 incident were declassified in response to archival inquiries about Cold War infrastructure. The documentation referenced loss of contact during environmental survey. There was no mention of active lighting, no mention of sealed interior hatches. The dock basin was described as partially thawed due to residual geothermal flux. Independent geologists reviewing the area found no credible geothermal activity within mapped strata. Satellite archives show that during the week following the incident, polar cloud cover intensified over the grid square. Ice drift shifted dramatically, compressing surface layers. By the following winter, the precise shaft location was no longer visible through standard imaging techniques. It is possible that the structure collapsed beneath pressure ridges. It is possible that shifting tectonic plates fractured the basin floor, creating an undetected sinkhole through which 9 operators descended beyond retrieval. It is possible that internal battery systems endured far longer than predicted, and that acoustic resonance created the illusion of pacing footsteps. Each explanation accounts for part of the record. None account for all of it. What remains is absence, documented, measured, and unresolved. 9 experienced operators entered a sealed Cold War installation beneath Arctic ice. They reported active systems inconsistent with decommissioned status. Their final words were composed, procedural, and without distress. There was no struggle, no breach, no trace of withdrawal, only corridors still lit, water still open, and then nothing. Arctic regions have long held remnants of conflicts officially concluded but never fully dismantled. Beneath ice and permafrost, structures outlast intention. War leaves behind materials designed to endure beyond memory. Some installations are abandoned carefully, others simply fade from oversight, preserved by cold. The 1993 entry is not widely discussed. Within naval circles, it surfaces occasionally as a cautionary reference to the unpredictability of extreme environments. It is rarely framed as anything beyond operational risk. But for those who review the transcripts in full, certain patterns resist dismissal. Sound matching movement. Systems active without maintenance. Doors secured from the opposite side. Heat fading once observed. There is a particular stillness in polar regions, a kind of vast indifference. Wind moves snow across distances where no human presence persists. Beneath that surface, structures remain suspended in time, sealed by pressure and cold. Whether the loss in 1993 was the result of mechanical oversight, environmental miscalculation, or something less understood, the outcome remains unchanged. 9 names remain classified in most public records. Their families were given folded flags and controlled explanations. And somewhere beneath shifting Arctic ice, a corridor once glowed with amber light, briefly before returning to dark. Whether this was misperception, unfinished Cold War machinery, or something that simply does not conform to our frameworks, the account has endured in quiet circulation for decades. For the men who went below that night, it was not theory, it was duty, and whatever met them, there left no evidence except the silence that followed.